Hey there, music lovers, where you been? Thanks so much for checking out the channel and for, taking the time to watch this video. In this one, I'm going to be talking about the 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony that took place about a month ago. I'm going to talk about, the artists that went in, who inducted these artists, anything notable from the speeches, what was performed, and, what are these artists doing next? Now that they've achieved the highest honor in rock and roll, the same honor that's gone to Tupac, that's gone to Grandmaster Flash, it's gone to Madonna, the greatest honor that you could have being a rock and roll artist. And I'm not going to go into my whole beef with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've already done that, been there, done that. I'll put a link up to my last video, the one that came out when they announced all of these artists. I went into it. Basically, I think that the Hall of Fame, they disrespect the fans, they disrespect bands. Sure, the night that you're inducted, you can feel the weight of it. Even like Rush admitted that for as many years as they were snubbed, and they even came out and said, look, we don't give a shit if we get inducted or we don't. But the night that you're there, you've got all your fans around you, you can feel the love in the room. It's a whole different story. But I think that they've waited way too long, the Rock Hall, to induct some of these bands. Some of these artists are dropping dead before they can get in. Chris Squire, one of the best bass players in history with Yes. When they finally got in, he had already passed away. Poor Ray Thomas from the Moody Blues. He was alive when the band was nominated, but he had passed away by the time the induction ceremony rolled around just a few months later. That's a shame. And even when they induct some of these bands, they don't put everybody in that they should. They don't put in all the members that really deserve credit. Where was Steve Morse when Deep Purple went in? He's been with the band for 20 years, that kind of thing. All right, so let's get into the induction ceremony. And Stevie Nicks, she kicks off the show. And this is a historic night for her. She's the first female artist that has ever been inducted twice into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She went in first with her band Fleetwood Mac, and now she's going in as a solo artist. I'm not sure how many other female artists can really make that claim. She's in a very, very limited company. I suppose you've got like Tina Turner, she was with Ike and Tina. She's already in for that, but she could go in as a solo artist. What do you think? Who else could go in as having been a member of a band and now solo? So be sure to drop that below and let me know. But Stevie Nicks, she came out, she looked good, she sounded good, came out with Stand Back. And I'm watching this performance and I'm thinking to myself, okay, now I know why Mick Fleetwood picked her instead of Lindsey Buckingham, because, she just commands a lot more attention. She has a lot more presence. You can say what you want about her talent or her singing or whatever. It really doesn't matter. She commands attention. She has a look about her. She is what is worth watching in Fleetwood Mac. I mean, if you took her out of Fleetwood Mac, who were you going to look at? You're going to look at Christine McVie, John McVie. They're like anchors. They're like tied to the stage. Mick Fleetwood, he's like watching Animal from the Muppets. So he's somebody to watch, but he's not a singer. And you need a singer that can command attention. And Stevie does that. And she's got the star power. And that's why she's fronting the band, and Lindsey Buckingham didn't get that job. And then after Stand Back, Don Henley comes out and he does a duet with Stevie, Leather and Lace, which was a big hit for her back in the day. And I thought it was kind of sweet how Stevie stood next to Don while he sang his part. You could tell that there was a lot of love there between them. I think they were an item back in the day. And so that was really cool. And then up next was Stop Dragging My Heart Around, which was a song that Stevie originally did with Tom Petty. But since he can't be there, she sang it with Harry Styles. And Harry Styles, I had heard about him, and a friend of mine told me that he had a good album, his good solo album. And I was like, well, what's up with him? Where's he from? He's like, well, he's from One Direction. And I was like, well, I don't listen to that crap. Why would I want to listen to his solo album? He's like, no, it's classic rock. It's good. You ought to check it out. I still haven't checked it out. So let me know what you think of Harry Styles if you've ever heard him before. But I thought he did a great job here. He sang great, had a really good vocal. He also inducted Stevie Nicks, which I thought was a bit odd because I would have thought that would have went to Mike Campbell. You know, Mike Campbell from the Heartbreakers, you know, good friends with Petty and Stevie Nicks, and of course Campbell has played on all of Stevie's solo albums. I would have thought, and plus he's a bandmate with her now in Fleetwood Mac, I would have figured he would have been perfect to induct her. But no, Harry got the nod for whatever reason, and he did a good job. Overall, Stevie Nicks turned in a great performance. Nice acceptance speech. So what's up next for Stevie Nicks this year? She is on tour with Fleetwood Mac for most of 2019. They'll be hitting Australia, the UK, and then back to the US for more dates. Okay, so up next in the 2019 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremony, it's The Cure. And they're a pretty good ad here because there aren't a lot of bands from the alternative genre that are represented in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I think more of them need to go in. You know, where are the Smiths? Where are they? They should be in there. REM's already there. The Cure now is in. Big influence on artists like Trent Reznor. He's the one that inducted them. He gave a great speech. And he said that he didn't feel connected to the world until he heard The Cure. And so I think that Trent Reznor really hit on something, is that for the fans that felt alienated for whatever reason, there were certain bands that connected them. And The Cure was one of those bands. The speech that Trent Reznor gave was very moving. You know, Robert Smith, the lead singer for The Cure, he was getting teary-eyed. I was hoping he brought the waterproof mascara because he certainly had the makeup caked on. You know, he kind of reminded me of this demented old lady that I used to know. And, you know, she used to put her lipstick on, but it didn't quite make the lines, and you didn't want to say anything to her about it. But, you know, Robert Smith, I mean, he looked like a horror show. But he sang very, very well. The band played very, very well. And it was a good performance. He sounded good. They did Shake Dog Shake, a Forest love song, Just Like Heaven, Boys Don't Cry. And it was a good set. So good to have The Cure in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. In terms of what's up next for The Cure, they have a new album coming out in 2019. It's supposed to be very intense and depressing, you know, just the way you like a Cure album. It's their first album in like a decade. Also, Robert Smith, he curated this festival in California coming up in August called the Pasadena Daydream Festival. I think the Pixies are in there too, a bunch of other bands. And there's also a 40th anniversary documentary about The Cure that's been in the works. It's going to feature some stuff from the Hyde Park show that they did last year and much more. So be looking out for that. All right, up next is Janet Jackson. She was inducted this year, and I believe she also had a historical induction. She's going to be the last of the Jacksons to ever get into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I mean, let's face it, who is left? Her brothers are in. Michael is in, right? Jackson 5, Michael Jackson solo. Her sisters that are left, Rebe, LaToya, I don't see them getting in. So Janet is it. And she was inducted by Janelle Monáe, who gave a great speech. Janet came out. She looked radiant and beautiful. Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, her longtime producers, were there for her. And she thanked her father for pushing her, although I wonder if he pushed her as hard as he did her brothers. A lot of the stories that I've read had him like beating them with belts and stuff like that. So don't know. She did not perform. And I believe it was because of the Leaving Neverland documentary, which HBO aired. They also are airing this induction. And so I think that she wanted to protest HBO and putting out that documentary. Her family has come out. The Jacksons have come out against this film, which brings up the whole Michael Jackson child abuse stuff. I did a whole video. I really went in depth through the whole 4-hour documentary. I'll put a link up to it so you can check it out. I don't want to go rehash all that stuff, but I do believe that that's why she didn't perform. Didn't want to give HBO any more time than she had to. It's not because she couldn't perform, because right now she's actually on a Vegas residency. She just kicked it off last night, and it will run through the fall. All right, up next is ROXY Music. and they were inducted by Duran Duran's Simon Le Bon and John Taylor, who came out and pretty much said there would be no Duran Duran if it wasn't for ROXY Music. The band came out. Brian Ferry gave the acceptance speech. They gave nods to various people who have been in their band. It was nice to see them give a shout out to John Wetton, formerly of Asia, and King Crimson, who had also spent some time playing with ROXY. Brian Eno was a no-show. He was a no-show because he didn't want to leave a carbon footprint by taking an airplane ride to the ceremony. So, you know, I got to remember that one. Next time somebody asks me to do something that I don't want to do, I just can't make my carbon footprint any bigger than my ego. I just can't. All right, so ROXY Music did perform. They pulled out In Every Dream a Heartache, a great electric violin solo from Eddie Jobson here. And also Out of the Blue, Love is the Drug, which was not aired on HBO, but they did play it. And also Avalon and More Than This. Overall, the band sounded really, really good. Don't look for them to go on tour. There's no like ROXY Music reunion that's going to be happening. Brian Ferry is actually hitting the road this summer. And his other bandmates from ROXY Music, Phil Manzara and Annie McKay, are actually going to be touring with an orchestra a little bit later on this year, and they're going to be playing like ROXY Music stuff with an orchestra, so check that out if you're interested. All right, up next are Radiohead. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year, and they were inducted by David Byrne, former lead singer for the Talking Heads. And I recently did a video where I talked about an interview that I did with Chris Frantz and Tina Weymouth of the Talking Heads. They're 50% of the band, husband and wife team, bass and drums, and a great interview. Much different than the typical ones that I have done where you get like 15, 20 minutes with an artist and then you're done, like a hard stop kind of thing. With this one, I was invited to their home up in Connecticut, and we had dinner by the pool, and it was just hours of talking, and it was really, those are the ones that make a real impression, you know. And one of the moments during the interview that I really enjoyed was when Chris said, look, if you turn off the recorder, we can talk some off the record stuff, which basically meant, you know, we're going to talk some shit about Byrne. And yeah, that's what we did. I wish I could remember the stories that Chris and Tina told. There were quite a few, but I really can't remember them. Of course, we don't have them on record. And but I do remember that Chris said that David Byrne, there was a point where he was really jealous of him because he was with Tina. Now, Chris and Tina and David Byrne, they went to school together. It might have been college, I think. And so they knew each other since they were kids. And Chris said that David Byrne had the hots for Tina, and he didn't like the fact that Chris was getting in the way. Chris and Tina got married in 1977 when the Talking Heads dropped their first album. Now, I'm not sure if this jealousy or conflict or whatever it was continued into their marriage, into the band, or if it was just around that time. I'm not sure, but it was the first time that I had heard about this kind of thing. And you know, the general gist of what I got from the conversation with Chris and Tina was that David Byrne was just kind of this eccentric, kind of a weirdo. Like, he was a control freak, very strange, and very difficult to work with, which is probably the reason why the Talking Heads are not doing anything now. The last time they actually performed was at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when they got inducted, and that was a great, great performance. And so it's a shame that the Talking Heads can't do anything, but it's because of Byrne. Byrne would rather do his own thing, and he would rather perform those songs his own way with his own band and not retread the Talking Heads. It's probably never going to happen, but if there was one band from the 80s that I wish could do something again, it would be the Talking Heads, but I would not hold your breath. As for Radiohead, they didn't perform. Only a couple of members showed up. Tom York was not one of them. Tom York is actually touring this year, solo. And also, David Byrne is going to be on Broadway this year. From what I understand, he has this unique concept where his band is going to be fully mobile. Like, there's not going to be anybody that is stationed at any one place. They're all going to be moving around. you know, trumpet player or a woodwind or a drummer or whatever. Nobody's going to be tied to any one place. And because of this, it's quite a visual experience from what I understand. That's why he's doing it on Broadway. So he's going to be doing that. All right, so up next are the Zombies. And what's interesting about them is that when they were inducted, it was 50 years to the day that they hit #1 with Time of the Season back in 1969. So was that coincidence? Was it planned? What the hell's going on with that? I don't know. But Susanna Hoffs is the one who inducted them. Susanna Hoffs, lead singer for the Bangles. She talked about how she was heavily influenced by the Zombies, a big fan of theirs. I was a big fan of Susanna Hoffs back in the day. I can tell you that. I mean, she was so beautiful. I think a lot of guys were crushing on Hoffs. And she still looks beautiful. For 60 years old, she looks like she's in her 40s. She even mentioned it during the ceremony that she was 60. I didn't realize time had passed that quickly, to be honest with you. But the Zombies, on the other hand, you know, they are living up to their name. Let's just put it that way. Like if they formed a new band now, they could still call it the Zombies. They did all their hits. You know, She's Not There, Tell Her No, and of course Time of the Season. And vocally, a little bit questionable in some spots with some of the highs, but overall the band turned in a good performance. And if you're wondering what they're doing next, they're actually hitting the road with Brian Wilson this year. And they're going to be playing their Odyssey and Oracle album in its entirety. So check that out if you're a fan of the Zombies. All right, and last but not least, it's Def Leppard. They got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, and they were inducted by none other than Brian May of Queen. It couldn't have been a more perfect setup. You know, I know I talked about how Harry Styles was kind of questionable. Why is he introducing Stevie Nicks? You had Susanna Hoffs, who was a big fan of the Zombies. She was influenced by them. You know, Trent Reznor was influenced by The Cure. But in this case, Brian May is the influencer. He's the one, along with Queen, that influenced Def Leppard. Of course, they were also influenced by Mott the Hoople and, you know, T-Rex and many other bands from the British 70s. And so Brian May, you know, gave a great speech. He moved Rick Allen to tears. It was one of those moments where the band, you could tell they were feeling the love. And, you know, I've talked about Rick Allen on this channel before. He's just an amazing guy. And what the band did, rallying behind him, you know, when you have a drummer who loses his arm, you know, at the height of your success, you know how many bands would be tempted to just pick up and get somebody else in there and just move on? Or maybe, you know, you think, well, this is it. You know, I'm a drummer and I've lost my arm. How could I possibly have a future? But Rick Allen, he overcame that. He made it his business right away to learn how to play drums, had a special setup, you know, and the band never gave up on him. They never talked about putting somebody else in there. So, you know, they also had to endure the death of Steve Clark, their guitarist. They had a period there in the 90s where it was kind of a dead zone for them. I remember working in radio during that time, and they weren't getting a whole lot of love, a lot of airplay, certainly no hits. And so, you know, or at least no hits towards the later part of the decade. They had some stuff early on, but they weathered all that stuff, and now they're touring around the world, selling out shows, doing very, very well for themselves. And of course, Def Leppard performed. They did Rock of Ages, Photograph, Pour Some Sugar on Me, did a great job. All-Star Jam at the end of the show. They brought out Ian Hunter of Mott the Hoople. That's another band that influenced them. And they did all the old dudes. I mean, all the young dudes. They had all the other, you know, some other people from other bands came out, did the All-Star Jam. I'll admit it was a bit underwhelming. I didn't think it was all that. I mean, the song, All the Young Dudes, I'm not really a fan of. And so I wasn't really crazy about the All-Star Jam. To me, it just kind of fell flat. I thought the All-Star Jam at the beginning of the show with Stevie Nicks and Don Henley and Harry Styles and Waddy Wachell and all that, I thought that was a much better all-star-ish kind of jam, even though it wasn't really a jam. But anyway, Def Leppard, they're on tour this year. Go check them out. They're on tour in Europe, in Canada, and they're going to be doing a Vegas residency, which a lot of bands are starting to do now. We're starting to get a lot of bands that are jumping on board with that. As I mentioned, Janet Jackson, she just started hers, and Def Leppard will do one in Vegas in August and September. So anyway, overall, it was a pretty cool show. Great performances, good vibes. You know, one thing I wonder is we had Simon Le Bon and John Taylor of Duran Duran make an appearance. First time I've seen them at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I know that when Joan Jett made her appearance at the Hall of Fame to induct Nirvana, she was on the ballot the following year. And then she got in. And I'm wondering, just wondering if Duran Duran will start making the nomination list. What do you think? You think Duran Duran should be in there? Let me know. Put it down below. I know that Motley Crue just topped a fan vote that the Rock Hall did. And Nikki Sixx has said that he doesn't care, that he wouldn't accept it. And I think he said somebody from the Rock Hall actually told him, don't worry, we won't put you in anyway. So, and that's another question. Would Motley Crue fit in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? What do you think? You know, I think that they topped the list because of the movie that just came out. They're kind of on a lot of fans' minds now. But what was interesting is that the list also included Iron Maiden. They were number 3 on that list. Phil Collins was on that list. First time I've seen his name thrown into a possible for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And Freddie Mercury was on that list too, even though he really didn't have a solo career. And he's already in the Hall with Queen. Anyway, let me know what you think. Put your comments below. What did you think about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame ceremony, and who should be in, who shouldn't be in? Drop it down below. And yeah, so that wraps it up. More videos coming. I got concert reviews. I've been to some shows. I've got that coming up and much more. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Hit that subscribe button, and I will be back soon with another video.